Welcome on into the Wolverine.com podcast. Clayton Sayfie with Anthony Broome. This is take 2. So we're going to lay out what's going to happen here. We recorded just before Jim Harbaugh releases a statement on some of the NFL rumors that came out. We will leave that part in. A lot of it still stands, but we're going to react right now and read off of this statement from Jim Harbaugh. So we're going to pull it up for the people on YouTube. You can read this on your screen. Jim Harbaugh says in a statement, quote, "I am aware of the rumors and speculation over the last few days. College and NFL teams have great interest in all of our personnel, from players to coaches to staff, and I truly believe that is a testament to the strength of our University of Michigan football program. As I stated in December, while no one knows what the future holds, I expect that I will be enthusiastically coaching Michigan in 2023. I have spoken with President Santa Ono and Athletic Director Ward Manuel and appreciate their support of me and our program. Our mission as Wolverines continues, and we are preparing for the 2023 season with great passion and enthusiasm. As our legendary coach Bo Schembechler said, those who stay will be champions." That is Jim Harbaugh's statement. Of course, a little bit non-committal there, Anthony. It is a statement nonetheless. We talk later on in the podcast about how this could drag on like last season already. It's not the same because we didn't get any word from Jim Harbaugh a year ago at this time about some of the same rumors. Right now saying he expects to be at Michigan. Well, no one knows the future. I think that's just going to be a caveat he says before he says anything now. It's kind of part of his repertoire. Your reaction to this?
I mean, yeah, he's been qualifying everything from no man knows the future, from injury updates and press conferences to his status as Michigan's head coach to maybe his Starbucks order. I don't know. Vanilla sweet cream cold brew is what he would usually get, but no man knows the future. So
Jim Harbaugh drinking that, I can't picture that at all.
No, I'm projecting there. That's one of my favorites. Anywho, yeah, it is in terms of a statement. And again, people will hear what we had to say on the saga a little bit later from our earlier recording, but I don't know that anything that we did say in that really dates itself much. So definitely would encourage you to stick with us the entire time. But it is a step in the, it's not a refutation of NFL interest. It's not a confirmation that he's staying at Michigan. It is him basically restating what he said a little over a month ago, that while no man knows what the future holds, he expects to be at Michigan next year. Which, the fact that he did put out a statement, and the fact that he publicly says there has been contact with Santa Ono and Ward Manuel, kind of leads me to believe that he was probably pushed. We talk about it later in the episode how he's I think he's up skiing at Boyne right now. So there was probably a push from leadership and administration to be like, hey, listen, we can't do this every year. We need some kind of statement, some kind of refutation, whatever it is. And this is what they got. So to me, it's we do know that there are contract negotiations going on behind the scenes. Jim Harbaugh, no man knows the future, but assuming he's at Michigan in 2023, he's going to have a raise. His assistants will have a raise. There will be some, it can't be baked into his contract, but we do know that there's some stuff and some changes coming to the NIL landscape at Michigan. So at the end of the day, this is, I don't know, like, this saga is not over until we get that confirmation in our inbox that a contract extension has been signed, a raise has been given, all that. But they needed to, I really do think this time around, they needed to say something, because they couldn't do 4 or 5 weeks again of will he or won't he? And, is he going to sign a contract? What's going on with the contract? This is at least again, I don't know that it changes much, but it is the first time we've heard from him since the season has ended. So that's him on the record, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it'll calm things down, at least for the short term. This may well be the end of it. This may be the way Jim Harbaugh, absolutely says that it's not going to happen. But at the same time, he has in the past come out with statements saying, this is total crap. It's jive turkeys that are doing. So he has been stronger about things like this in the past. Of course, that's a few years ago. He was also tweeting, back then, and, it was a little bit different. So I think, to me, I'm going to be watching what's next. Is there going to be something else that pops up? Does a new team on Black Monday, next Monday, reach out to him? And do we start hearing rumblings from the NFL side that he's interested? we will see. So it's kind of wait and see mode still. That's why we're going to leave in the rest of the podcast, but also this is good news. If you're a Michigan fan, this is much better than nothing. This is not nothing. Although he did qualify some of the statements in there. And I will say this too, that those who stay will be champions, him adding that in, I don't think he takes that lightly either. The fact that he chose to put that in there, I think speaks, volumes. And again, I'm not saying that there's no chance he leaves, but I think that, we already talk about it later on, of course, but we both of us think that he probably will be back. This certainly raises my confidence level of that.
I don't know that you tug on that particular string of the nostalgia, the member berries, if you will. If again, it's none of this is done with ill intent. I don't think I don't think there's any sort of misdirection or him being not fully telling the truth about what's going on. I want to answer the questions real quick because people will naturally say, well, why does he keep qualifying it? Remember again, and this is something that you'll hear us address later on, is that Jim Harbaugh does have representation now. And when you are part of a negotiation, you don't necessarily if you just give the other side the ammo that, hey, listen, I'm coming back. They can say, well, if you're coming back no matter what, then there's really nothing to negotiate here. So the NFL interest is, I do think the interest this time around is more from the league than it is Jim Harbaugh, but let's acknowledge that itch is there. And I think the right offer could pull him away if he's not exactly feeling the love. So this is still an active negotiation. Everything that we've heard about it is that the temperature has come down the last couple of days. Things are moving in the right direction based on what we know. We'll see what happens from there. But I think that's just kind of the long and the short of where we're at right now. Michigan, I do think some sort of statement needed to be put out. I think that the heat did need to be turned down a little bit. We've even seen it on our message board of people scrambling to find the emails of the athletic department and the president's office. Like, I think they needed to just calm people down just a little bit and let the process play itself out. But Black Monday coming in the NFL, there will be more jobs that open up. I'm sure there will be more reported interest. It would behoove Michigan, if they're truly in a negotiation right now, to just get this done and wrapped up with, so we can move forward here and talk about a team and heading into an off season that I think can improve in a lot of ways, which is scary to think about, but that's the reality where this program is at right now.
We're going to leave it there for now. For those people watching on YouTube, make sure to like the video and subscribe for one, but also you may notice that I got a haircut in between, our earlier recording and now. So that happened as well. That was not the breaking news though that we jumped on for. Thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of the show. But Anthony, we are 5 days removed from Michigan's 2022 season. How are you feeling about things here a few days out?
It's a loaded question, right? I mean, I think with the benefit of hindsight now, I think we can all sit here and call it a missed opportunity. I think one stop here or one less mistake there, we're probably getting on a plane to LA either today or tomorrow. And that's not happening now. And TCU, credit to them, found a way to win the game. Really just an impressive, every time there was a moment in that second half where you're like, all right, here comes Michigan's second half team, TCU had a response for it. Mm-hmm. And that was, impressive on their part as well. I don't think that Michigan overlooked them. I just don't think they played a very good football game. They beat themselves, and kind of what the recipe was going to be coming into that game is that Michigan is the better football team, but if they beat themselves, anything can happen. And it was the most out of left field performance in that regard of, 2 pick sixes from JJ McCarthy. You fumble on the goal line. You have a couple other missed opportunities when your defense can't get off the field. It was frustrating. And, the further we get away from it, the more there's this realization of that, it is so hard to win. It's so hard to make the playoff in general. I think because it was so casually and clinically dominant for this Michigan team throughout the year, I think people kind of took for granted how hard it is to do what they did this year. And that's, if you want to call that a silver lining, fine. But fact of the matter is now they've been to the playoff twice and are 0-2. And this was obviously much more competitive than last year's game, but those bowl, the postseason stuff. I know this isn't the same as what a Peach Bowl in 2018 was, where you had guys opt out, or 2016 where Jabril Peppers doesn't play, Jake Butt goes down. But the end result is the end result. Whatever you want to blame for what that loss was, it was a squandered opportunity, and it bothers me. It should bother fans that I think that Michigan kind of shot itself in the foot, and to me, what feels like the most winnable college playoff there's ever been. So it's frustrating. I think that time will be, it's going to sink. It hasn't quite sunk in yet. There's going to be some time that it takes to kind of for people to absorb this, and obviously, we don't even get to New Year's Day without there being Jim Harbaugh rumors and some of that drummed up yearly drama. So it's the dust hasn't quite settled yet. There's a lot to still sort of sort out in terms of, there will probably be more guys that go into the transfer portal. There will be guys that declare for the NFL. But yeah, great season. Arguably one of the top maybe 3 or 4 seasons, top 2, top 3, whatever you want to put it, in Michigan history. They'd never won that many games before, and it's so hard to go undefeated now. But it could have been so much more, and that doesn't sit right. And the good news is that much of this team will be back. We think. I was about to say we think the head coach will be back, but it's been kind of crazy on that front too. But yeah, just a missed opportunity, and it's a bummer. It's one of those losses to where I think a lot of fans probably even had trouble even turning on the game that came on afterwards. So yeah, rough day at the office at the worst possible time.
Yeah, I think going back to what you said about, it's hard to pinpoint, and it's really actually impossible to pinpoint, why they lost this game or why they didn't play super well in this game. You have people saying, oh, well, did they not do enough fun things throughout the week, when they got down to Arizona? Because from what we heard, and JJ McCarthy saying that it was basically the scout team that was sent out on some of these, excursions to Topgolf and places like that. Or was it, is it just this bowl trend that Jim Harbaugh has? No, you can never know things like that. But the fact of the matter is, as you said, I mean, they did things to shoot themselves in the foot. I credit TCU for playing a really good game. I thought, the way they stopped the run and the way they ran the ball was really fantastic. I mean, 13 of Donovan Edwards' 23 runs went for 3 yards or less. He was stopped for, I believe, 6 plays of either no gain or negative yardage. They had 13 tackles for loss on the entire game. So this wasn't all Michigan shooting itself in the foot. But, man, if you look at some of those plays, 2 pick sixes, again, maybe a pick and then they score anyway on that drive, but there's probabilities there. There's a good chance you stop them anyway. And then fumbling at the 1 on 1st and goal, take the Philly special out of it. There was still plenty of opportunities. So those obviously sting. And from a big picture standpoint for me, when I look at this season, and you kind of have to compare it to 2021 in a way because they were similar. You won the Big Ten. It's kind of part of this 2-season stretch, 28-game span where you went 25-3. It was obviously a huge success. I mean, if you win the Big Ten, to me, if you beat Ohio State, it is a successful season. But the end of this one, even though the entirety of this season was better, the end stings so much more, because when you lost to Georgia 34-11 in the Orange Bowl last year, by the third quarter, I was saying, great season. Michigan did a great job. I wasn't saying, there was impossible they would come back, but, you knew that wasn't going to happen. And this time you're still thinking about interceptions, fumbles, play calls, things like that, defensive lapses, missed tackles on 3rd and 7. So the ending stings more. But it was a better season than 2021. It was something that when we talked to Michigan players going back to last spring, when we first got to talk to them back in February-ish, March, they were saying, we have to take that next step. We want to take that next step. And they kind of did in a way, because they beat Michigan State. That was one of their goals. They went undefeated at 13-0, first time in program history to win 13 games. And then you were just ever so close to actually taking that next full step into the national title game. But what's the thing, Anthony, that, and of course time will also help this, not only help heal the wounds, but also help our perspective on this season. And the same goes for all the Michigan fans out there. But maybe what's the one thing or a couple things that are going to be maybe that snapshot when you think of the 2022 season? What's the picture or something that pops into your head?
Well, it's the two biggest wins to me were that win against Penn State at home, just a complete destruction of the Nittany Lions, and the Ohio State game. I mean, that is one that, it is, they did something they hadn't done in 22 years. They went down to the shoe and won. It had been the first time in that long that they had won back-to-back games there. And, to me, that's, again, I'm not going to sit here and I know there are some people that'll say, oh, well, this program was founded on beating Ohio State and winning the Big Ten, and that matters more than the college football playoff. I'm going to tap the brakes on that a little bit. I've seen a bit of that, like especially on our message board, but it's a piece of the puzzle now. And when you go out and you set those four goals, beat Ohio State, beat Michigan State, win the Big Ten, win the national title, those are, they state those ahead of last season, and we're sitting here kind of rolling our eyes at it, right? Now it's, they achieved almost all of them. And it just kind of, it reminds me of, back in the early to mid 90s, where those young up and coming Red Wings teams would have these great regular seasons and then get to the playoffs and you kind of have to learn how to win at that level. I mean, Georgia and Alabama didn't just become what they were in, the flash of a pan. I mean, it takes years. It takes some rough losses. Look at what Clemson had been under Dabo Swinney, 4 or 5 years ago. Sometimes it just takes time to break through. And, the solace that you can take in how that TCU game goes is that JJ McCarthy will be back next year. And most of that defense will be back next year. And you know what? The crazy thing about it, and where you almost even kind of get more excited heading into the offseason, is that I think in the second half, obviously it was comeback time and it was all hands on deck, but you kind of stumbled upon what I think this offense sort of needs to look like next year in terms of it running through JJ McCarthy as opposed to, through the running game, which Michigan's always going to be a program that wants to beat your ass up front on both sides of the ball. They want to run the football. They'll never stop doing that. But, when we talk about the potential loss of a Blake Corum, to me, in the same way that the Corum offense was different from the run game that they ran with Hassan Haskins primarily leading the way last year's, you come back and it takes a little bit of a different shape. And I think we saw, the good and bad of JJ McCarthy, we saw all of it on display, but I think the good that we saw of it, especially during that second half comeback was outstanding. And I think that was eye-opening to me in that, okay, this is, I think, kind of what we thought it would look like in terms of him being able to run the ball, him just ripping the ball down the field and guys making these big plays. And credit to the wide receivers too. I think for the most part, those guys played one of their better games of the season as a position group. But for me, you look back on this season and it's similar to, at the end of last year, Jim Harbaugh said, it feels like this is the start of something. This season was the continuation of that. And I think that 2023 has the ability to be even more of a continuation of that, where you push this thing forward. And to be frank with you, I think they'll be better in a lot of key areas. So we'll see what happens with that. But it's, for us personally, I think this is really the first time that, I think you were at every game this year, Clay.
The one game I missed was the Maryland home game because of a wedding, which is weird to say.
And maybe I need to wear this loss too, because I had been to every game this year and then don't go to the Fiesta Bowl and they lose. So so Michigan's 25-3 over the last 2 years. The only game I missed, the Rutgers game last year, but I wasn't at Michigan State. I wasn't at the Orange Bowl, and I wasn't at the Fiesta Bowl. So I've kind of avoided the sad traveling home, but maybe I can wear that a little bit. I won't do that, by the way. But yeah, just a great year overall, a tremendous year. Think about, the years that had preceded that, 9-4 and 10-3 and 8-5. This is in the COVID year, 2-4. This is rare territory for them, and I don't think people should lose sight of that. And I also think that the program needs to finally find a way to build off this momentum and keep pushing this thing forward, which so far not so good on that front to start 2023, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, context matters. Like, you should absolutely be disappointed because of how winnable that game was against TCU. The fact that, you felt like you had a team that could potentially win a national championship game. TCU is a 13.5-point underdog to Georgia. That spread would have been in single digits with Michigan, potentially within a score. Don't know, but so you were right there, and you felt like you had that opportunity. So context matters, absolutely. But also the context of when we were at Big Ten Media Day in the summer, and Ohio State was a unanimous pick to win the Big Ten for just the second time ever. A team was a unanimous selection by the media. That context matters too, in my opinion. The fact that they did outdo expectations, and I know the expectation here is to always win at that level, but I mean, context matters. Look at history. Look at recent history. It doesn't just happen. And still an outstanding season. In the picture that I'll remember, just kind of that snapshot. When you think of 2022, when you think of 2021, it was definitely for me just like watching the fans rush the field and the looks on everybody's faces after the Ohio State win at home. This one was probably planting the flag when Mike Sainristil and those guys planted that flag at midfield at Ohio State this year on November 26th, or last year now. And just what that looked like. You're right. 22 years had gone by before something like that could happen. And I think that flag might be in the museum now. So there you go. People will be able to remember that one forever. But great year. We'll obviously be transitioning now to some of the offseason stuff that isn't as fun, Anthony, as we both can agree on that based on talking over the last year, because we had to go through it a year ago, and we'll see what exactly this is. But transitioning into the Jim Harbaugh stuff, where, as you said earlier, I mean, what did half a day go by, or was it January 2nd, where you get an athletic report saying that Jim Harbaugh, someone close to Jim Harbaugh, thinks that it would be a done deal if he gets an NFL offer. So there's a lot to kind of go through there. But then you start to realize, and these reports actually came out before that NFL teams are not only doing their homework on Jim Harbaugh, but they have him on their short list, particularly the Denver Broncos, Carolina Panthers, and then, of course, his ties to the Indianapolis Colts, reportedly been reached out to by both the Broncos and the Panthers. And I feel like if the Colts wanted to, they could maybe do that a little quieter because of some of those deep ties that he has. He's in the Ring of Honor there, so don't know exactly if any conversations have taken place there. And something else we don't know is what those conversations have entailed. What has Jim Harbaugh been saying? Has he been expressing interest? There hasn't been much to come out of exactly that. From the Michigan side of things, there appears to be some optimism that, they will strike a new deal with him. They didn't pay him enough apparently last year. Of course, he has another great season, so that changes things. And then now here we are with, them trying to get him maybe an even bigger deal, become one of the top paid coaches in the country, which I believe he deserves. Where do you feel like things stand at this point? Right now, to me, we're only a few days in. It may not be the same thing as a year ago where it dragged on and on and on. In hindsight, to me, last January, there wasn't a ton going on. There was Michigan saying, hey, we got a deal for you. Him saying, oh, I like, pretty good deal. I'm not going to sign it yet because I want to see, what my prospects are in the NFL. I don't think we're at that point where we know for sure that that's what's going to happen here. For all we know, it could end quickly either way. So I don't want to place any bets on how long this goes or whatever, but it seems like this could, play out similarly.
It's important to note when discussing Jim Harbaugh and Michigan that this is a one-of-one situation. It is a completely unique person and a completely unique institution that typically doesn't do business the way that some of these other big-time college programs do. I personally, like, if you're asking me to take like a gut feel of where this goes, I do think he'll be back at Michigan, only because it seems like when the buzz is the loudest in one direction, especially last year. I mean, the buzz got that loud because he got on a plane on, mind you, it was the late signing day, but on National Signing Day, and interviewed with the Minnesota Vikings. And there is leading up to the years leading up to that was kind of like the NFL rumors that cried wolf. Like, it was never coming from Jim Harbaugh. It always came from NFL media. And it's important to note too that, like, when Mike Florio or Ian Rappaport or Tom Pelissero report something, they don't have the same sources that that we do, or that the local beat might, or that the college media might. So I've always kind of been uncomfortable with people taking shots at those people, because we're not just, these aren't just like Facebook rumors or anything. Like, when the Adam Schefters of the world, when the Ian Rappaports of the world, the Tom Pelisseros of the world report that they're hearing something, they're hearing it from NFL sources. So
that's what makes Harbaugh so complicated to cover in terms of these. Remember in 2014, for that whole month, you had people in the NFL saying he's not going to go back to college. We can't believe it. A little bit of arrogance there, in my opinion, too, where why would anyone want to go back to college?
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, because you're only hearing it from one side. And he doesn't really talk off the record to anybody. So, those aren't coming from him. And that's why, too, like, not to interrupt, but like, something I should have mentioned too about my stance on it is, you are hearing some of this optimism that I mentioned about from the Michigan side saying, yeah, he's going to get a raise, and we think he's going to sign. We heard that same optimism. I'm not trying to be a doomsday. I actually agree with you. I think he's going to be at Michigan this coming fall, but we did hear some of that same optimism in early January last year. He just didn't sign any of this stuff. So it's really hard to read, but yeah, go ahead.
Well, part of it too is that I think that if there's a sticking point here, let's talk about it from a Michigan perspective, because there are different spheres and pods that we can go into. In that, I won't say you're experiencing an unprecedented amount of success, but in the modern age of Michigan football, it's been 25 years since you were this good for 2 years in a row. So
yes.
To me, if you are the administration, and these are business, like, Ward Manuel's a businessman, right? He's run college athletic departments. The Michigan endowment is flush with cash. The athletic department is flush with cash. There has to be a realization that in order to keep, we just talked about how you build off this and push forward. In order to, I guess, make money, so to speak, or cultivate and grow this brand, this culture, this amount of winning, you have to be able to invest. You have to have a willingness to invest in it too. So I don't see why there would be any sticking point in making him one of the top, 5, 6, 7 paid head coaches in all of college sports, without saying, well, you're going to have to earn it though. You're going to have to go beat Ohio State. You're going to have to go win the Big Ten championship. Did he make almost $10 million this year based on incentives? He did. But, it's important to note, too, that Jim Harbaugh has representation now. I believe he's using his brother's agent. So, when we're heading into an offseason where I think it's pretty apparent you got to put a little more money in his pocket. It's not a hot take. You pay, when you're winning at that level, you pay market value for it. And that's 10, 11, 12 million dollars a year. That's just what the going rate is now. And if you have any interest in, if it's not Jim Harbaugh, you're going to have to go get someone. Your pool shrinks if there's an unwillingness to not pay that out. So I do think that it's a little, the loudness is a little bit strategic in terms of, oh, well, the Broncos have reached out. The Panthers have reached out because he does have an agent. And what agents do on behalf of their clients is they negotiate. And I think the Harbaugh camp does kind of come out of a position of power right now, given what they've done over the last 2 years. So it feels like there's a lot of percolating momentum behind the scenes for the new Harbaugh deal, the NIL stuff, which would be great for Michigan if they can get that sorted out. But, at the same time, if there's any question to pay him what he's worth, and it's not just like, he's not throwing that number out there. We're going by what guys at lesser programs. There's one just up the road right now that's making a lot more money as a base than Jim Harbaugh will. If there's any consternation about that, what are we even doing here would be my question. So to me, I think it's again, when you're conducting business, you don't just give someone a blank check, but I think this is This is as close to a blank check argument as it gets for me, honestly. So there are other people who say it's not about the money and that it's about the itch to come to the NFL. And also a lot of this too is interest coming from the NFL. Jim Harbaugh, I think, is up north skiing right now. So he's not, again,
I'd love to see that, by the way.
That's that's the great part about having representation too, is that you just kind of get to, season's over, you get to stretch out and put your feet up. It's been a long, 16, 17 weeks, even longer than that for a guy like Jim Harbaugh, who's always just locked into the sport of football. But I think that I trust, again, I don't have Chris Ballas has most of the intel from our site. I won't claim to know anything. I've heard some other things from people I trust that money is not going to be an issue and all those types of things. But I don't know. I feel optimistic, and I don't know that this will ever stop being a yearly dalliance, especially when you hear reports that, the Broncos might be willing to give them $20 million a year in full control. I mean, if someone makes you a Godfather offer like that, I mean, the calculus changes a bit on that. But in the here and the now, I'm not getting quite sucked into this saga like I have the last 2 years.
I'm with you. I don't think enough has happened yet either. And I know part of what happened last year was just how long it dragged on for. That was something in and of itself, really, right? But I agree. And I think, to me, Jim Harbaugh hasn't been about the money in his past, but I strongly believe he thinks that money, and he views money as, kind of a sign of respect. And, even when he didn't, he was very close to taking the job in 2011 here at Michigan, and he wasn't quite feeling the love. And that was kind of the quote where, maybe this isn't the time. And of course comes when Jim Hackett does an incredible job in 2014 and brings him here. But yeah, that's an interesting thing. And then there's also something that may be a part of these quote unquote negotiations, which is something that John U. Bacon wrote about just this morning, with the fact that there may be something that comes out in terms of a minor NCAA violation from the COVID year, something with Zoom and whatnot, and improper contact with the recruit in terms of what they're allowed to, or when they're allowed to talk, or what they're able to do. There's some rumblings, behind the scenes, nothing nefarious or anything like that, pretty minor and stuff that happens all around the country, and literally nothing compared to what we know goes on around the country with some of the Southern schools. We'll just leave it there. Even some schools that are just a little bit south of here. So to me, but there have been rumblings that was something, that was discussed also in some of these negotiations as well. Well, let's wait and see what comes of this, or whatever, from the Michigan side. So we'll see what happens there. Don't have the full picture, but that might be part of the equation as well. So that's where the Jim Harbaugh thing stands. Kind of, maybe. Those are our thoughts, and we will continue to monitor over at thewolverine.com. No better time to sign up. Of course, the offseason around these parts, just as exciting as the season. Not really, not as fun. But let's talk about our friends at Prize Picks real quick before we move on and talk about Andrel Anthony leaving real quick, and then we'll get to some basketball and get out of here. But there is not a better way to enjoy watching your favorite team than by playing daily fantasy with our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the simplest form of real money daily fantasy sports and just pits you against the numbers. Whether you're a fantasy sports nut or a casual fan looking to add some excitement to the games, Prize Picks is the perfect game for you. It is the best way to have action on the game in states like Michigan, Kentucky, Alabama, Florida, Texas, Georgia, and over 70% of the United States. Prize Picks is currently operational in over 30 states and Canada, not Ontario. You simply select 2 to 5 players and predict if they will go more or less than their Prize Picks projection. You can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. For the people watching on YouTube right now, our producer Hutch has the site pulled up there. You see some of the projections. I went with a little Lions flair this week. I'm going to go, and maybe I'm crazy for doing this, man. And I know the Lions need a win in Lambeau this weekend, but Jared Goff, he hasn't been as good in outdoor venues. There's actually a stat out there on that. He's been much better. Of course, part of that's playing at home in a dome, but I'm going to go more than 257.5 passing yards. I think he's going to get it done this weekend. And then Aaron Rodgers sitting at a pretty low total of 230.5 passing yards. I'm actually going to go more than for him too. I think that puts the Lions, somewhere in a really close game at the end, and we'll see what happens there. But AB, what do you got for a pick this week?
Yeah, I'm going with this one will probably won't be as evergreen because game is on Thursday. Podcast comes out Thursday. I'm going less than 19.5 points for Michigan's godson, Franz Wagner, as the Orlando Magic take on the Memphis Grizzlies on Thursday night. And then I have one for the national title game. I can't help it. I like this guy, even though he's a bit of a boogeyman now for Michigan fans. But Max Duggan, more than 235.5 passing yards in Monday night's game against the Georgia Bulldogs for a national title. And I got to be honest with you. I mean, I'm not going to go too much into it. I really do think that TCU has more than a puncher's chance to win that football game. So I'll be able to get over it by then. What happened last week. Hopefully it's going to be a great game. I think it will be. So those are my picks. Max Duggan, more than 235.5 passing yards, and Franz Wagner, less than 19.5 points against the Memphis Grizzlies.
Franz Wagner, fresh off of a suspension. Him and Mo both suspended. So, and Franz having a fantastic season. Download the PrizePicks app or visit prizepicks.com. Sign up using the code Wolverine to get an instant 100% bonus up to $100 on your first deposit. So if you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50, and so on. Don't forget, that's the PrizePicks app or prizepicks.com and the code Wolverine to claim your bonus today and take the viewing of your team to the next level this season. We'll finish with basketball, but real quick before we do that, Andrel Anthony, Michigan sophomore wide receiver, enters the transfer portal. He will head somewhere else. He already has offers from Miami and Oklahoma. Miami, of course, where Josh Gaddis is on the prowl down there in Miami Gardens, but coordinating that offense, which was not very good this year, maybe needs some help from a familiar face. Interesting one. Not a huge shock. The Andrel Anthony's moving on just based on, lack of playing time, lack of targets this year. But, I didn't think he was great in the time that he was in the game either. 7 catches only on the season, 80 yards. Was actually much better as a freshman, especially against Michigan State, of course. But I think he ends his career with only 3-4 multi-catch games. Anthony, you can correct me on that if I'm wrong. So kind of a little more uneventful than we thought it would be after the MSU game a year ago. But I wish Andrel the best. He's a great kid. Covered him a little bit as a recruit and really enjoyed talking to him and hope he does well. But this is interesting for the Michigan wide receiver room, too. You have Ronnie Bell heading to the NFL. You have Cornelius Johnson, who I think has a really big NFL decision to make in terms of from a Michigan standpoint, especially with Andrel gone, a little bit more riding on that. And then you have young guys that could play the outside spots like Darius Clemens or Amorion Walker. Anthony, you penned a nice column this morning talking about the wide receiver room, where things stand with Andrel gone. But your thoughts on that and just Andrel departing the program in general?
Yeah, feel uniquely connected with him, given that he was my player of the game pick like 10
That's
weeks
true.
in a row, and it never once played out that way. Yeah, I mean, the question every week was, what's up with Andrel Anthony, and why isn't he getting more playing time? And oh God, they should bench Cornelius Johnson. Oh, those are all things that I said, by the way, too. It was a source of frustration at times. Other guys just played better. He had opportunities out there, limited opportunities, only caught 7 of his 19 targets this season. He was someone where when we were talking about mid-season about the deep ball and getting that sorted out, a couple of them, it just seemed like he was like a fingertip length away from getting his hands on, but didn't make a play. And, I know that there was, he's a bit of a folk hero to a certain extent here because he went off against his hometown school in 2021 when he had that big game at Michigan State, but would have been even more of a legend, obviously, if Michigan would have found a way to win that game. But it was just a guy that I think there was some frustration there because, when we talked to Ron Bellamy during the offseason, I think it was during fall camp, he talked about how he would bring the wide receivers into his office, and he would have pictures of, Steve Breston and Braylon Edwards and all these guys. And, the Braylon Edwards comp was one that was sort of thrown on him. And, he was obviously a good dude. I have never heard anything but positive things about him in the locker room. It comes down to opportunity. He was part of those late night throwing sessions with McCarthy and Edwards last year after some of those primetime games. But, for me, it's just it creates opportunity. It also, again, no intel here. I think it's probably good news, quote unquote, good news in terms of if a guy like Cornelius Johnson might be back, he can opt in for a 4th year. You've got Roman Wilson there. And then from there, it's a pretty wide open room. I would say start putting stock in those sophomores. Darius Clemens is obviously, to me, almost slides into that Andrel role in terms of, all right, this is a guy that he's a young guy, sophomore year, think he can take the leap this year. We'll see what he does with the opportunities he gets. But don't forget about Tyler Morris either. That is the guy who we talk about Ronnie Bell and how critical that I see some Ronnie Bell in Tyler Morris's game. And obviously former high school teammate of JJ McCarthy. I think him coming off of, it might truly be one of his first, he was coming off a torn ACL his senior year of high school. So you'd hope he's fully healthy this offseason. Amorian Walker, there's still some debate. Is he a wide receiver? Is he a defensive back? I know that he's 6'4", 180 and it's fast as hell. And that's another guy that can get open down the field. So you kind of start pushing the stock over to the sophomores in the class. I wouldn't rule out a guy like Carmelo English playing early as a true freshman. Samaj Morgan's a guy that I'm pretty high on. Again, I don't exactly know where he fits. He's kind of in that Mike Sainristil type of role, but it's going to be a big offseason for all of these guys, but with the quarterback that they have, and I assume that he's going to even take that next step and get better. I hate to say I won't say I'm not worried about that position group. It's just one less body to answer a question next year. And they're not going to turn into the air raid. They're not going to turn into a team that wings it around the field for 35, 40 times a game. But I don't know. I kind of like the potential here still. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, you bring up some interesting points. So we have a story up as well with Darius Clemens talking about, how he needs to take the next step and how the spring is going to be a really big opportunity for him to kind of emerge one of those roles. And we talked to him before the Fiesta Bowl. This is, of course, before Andrel leaves and of course, some uncertainty there with Cornelius Johnson, what he's going to do. But I agree. I think Darius Clemens is going to be a guy, and there will be some of those sophomore leaps throughout Michigan history. And I'm going to write something about this in the coming days as well. You look at some of the top wide receivers in Michigan football history, Anthony Carter being an exception. A lot of them were pretty quiet in their freshman seasons. Of course, opportunity is a factor there. And just the fact that you're a freshman, you're in your first year of college football, and it's hard at that position at times. But the sophomore year has been really that big year to make those jumps. Roman Wilson is a guy who I think, looking at his snap counts from last season and the year before. So 2021, Roman Wilson took 73% of his snaps out wide, not in the slot. 2022, Roman Wilson takes 9.5% of his snaps out wide. The other 90% were in the slot. So they kind of moved him a little bit. He has the opportunity or, the potential or the ability to play more outside. That opens up some room for Tyler Morris, who has impressed me in just the way he moves around there. You're right. Like the route running feels a little bit Ronnie Bell, a little similar there. And remember when Roman Wilson goes out and goes to the locker room for part of the Fiesta Bowl, it's Tyler Morris in there getting some snaps. So I think they really like him. He made the big third in I think 7 catch at Rutgers. That was huge to move the sticks. And that game was still in doubt. I talked to Tyler Morris down at the Fiesta Bowl as well. So we'll have a story up with him in the coming days. But some potential, I think, for those sophomores. And Amorian Walker, I think he definitely wants to play wide out, and we'll see what happens there. We actually talked to him as well. So stay tuned for some of that, not to shamelessly plug here. But I did find this. Oh, go ahead.
No, I said plug away. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, that's true. But also this last word on Andrel Anthony. Ayako, one of our most respected posters on the Fort, our premium message board at thewolverine.com, kind of created a thread and started a discussion about who are some of the one-game legends in Michigan history, football, basketball, the like. And Andrel Anthony, of course, is one of them with that huge performance against MSU in 2021. but he joins the likes of, and I thought this was a really good poll, Cam Chapman for his 3-point buzzer beater Big Ten tournament in 2016, sends Michigan to the big dance. Spike Albrecht was another guy that people brought up. Some people bringing up Drake Johnson, although I thought he had a little bit some more good games. Justin Fargas apparently had a very good game back in the early 2000s against Northwestern. Jerome Jackson against Iowa. But I thought that was a good discussion and interesting, man, to put into context Andrel's career, because it did look really promising. I remember sitting up in that press box at Michigan State, and he's kind of going off in that game. And I said to Chris Ballas, our coworker, I said, and this is a time too when the Michigan wideouts were really struggling that year without Ronnie Bell. And I said, who do you think's the best wide receiver on this team? And we were both like, it's Andrel Anthony. I mean, he looks the part. And then here we are, of course, 7 catches this year. But so that might be something about my knowledge or evaluations more than anything. But we'll move on from Andrel Anthony. Again, wish him the best. Let's finish with some basketball talk. Michigan hoops. Anthony, your alma mater, comes in on December 29th and stuns the college basketball world with a win over Michigan 63-61. Pretty much on that night, everyone wrote them off. Then they come back and beat Maryland a few days later by 35 points. They win by 10 against Penn State. And suddenly you're 3-0 in the Big Ten. All 3 wins are by double digits, including the one against Minnesota in Minneapolis in December. And things look a hell of a lot better than they did a week and a half ago.
Yeah, crazy. And I'll just say this. I mean, what a conflicting set of emotions covering and being at that game. Obviously, for me, I have to, I shouldn't say I have to. I have the privilege of having a job where I get to watch Michigan basketball, attend those games at Chrysler Center, and that was bad. That was a really bad effort, and it was the effort because they just didn't play hard, and I think they were kind of even surprised. I haven't watched a lot of CMU basketball this year, but if I was scouting that game, I didn't think that CMU was going to play that hard and kind of come at them like that. So on one set, frustrating because it was just kind of, the most damning thing about that game, Clayton, was that it wasn't surprising that Michigan lost because they had played some of those bye games so close. I don't want to say they didn't take them seriously, but I don't know. That was a bad loss. And to have questions, you leave the non-conference without a signature win. Close but no cigar. To me, I'm sorry. It's not acceptable for Michigan basketball. It's not. It's set up a scenario where now you go into Big Ten play and you probably have to win 13 or 14 games in conference to give yourself a chance to win it, to make the NCAA tournament. And the good part about this league, though, is that every night out is a chance to add a signature win to your resume. And again, Maryland and Penn State aren't world beaters, but the biggest difference is that we've seen this team play harder. They've communicated better. As far as, Maryland was just wire-to-wire dominance, but Penn State, that was a game of runs, and Penn State had it. I think they got it down to 2, 47-45, or I think it was even tied, and then Michigan comes back and fires back with a run of its own, and Penn State makes a run at the end of the game, and Michigan kind of finishes it out. I think we do overlook at times that it is a very young team that is still kind of learning how to win. And, you look at this now, the problem with the non-conference is that, you also probably have to win a game or two somewhere you're not supposed to. We look at this stretch coming up here. You've got Michigan State on Saturday. You've got Iowa, Northwestern, Maryland, Minnesota. Those are all winnable games. And for me, if you want to sit here and say that, if you want to truly sell to me that this team is, back on the right track and has a shot to make the postseason, you got to go. To me, I look at that stretch and I see 4-1 is what I would probably need to see out of that. You go to Michigan State, you go to Iowa, you go to Maryland. They've lost their margin of error there. And then after that, listen, right now it looks like, Purdue, Ohio State, Rutgers, you got to win a couple of those that you won't be picked to win to kind of get where you need to be. So again, encouraging signs of life. It was good to see that when they play like they do at Maryland or against Maryland, it was almost like water was going to find it. Like there was an aspect of water finding its level where that loss to CMU was so bad that like there was going to be some, progression to what the mean actually is. The Penn State game was more impressive to me because I think it was a matchup kind of designed to exploit the things they don't do very well. And I thought that they did play well, and they had that, they had a punch and a counter punch. And, it's good to see coming into a stretch where now you're going to play 2 games at Breslin Center, which will be nutty as it always is. Iowa is a tough place to play. You'd like to see them keep it rolling, but to go into that game against Michigan State on Saturday, knowing that right now you're playing arguably coming off the 2 best games you've played all year, it is encouraging to say the least.
I hate to put numbers on it like they need to go 4-1 in a 5-game stretch, because then I've done that in the past, and then it's like, well, they don't do that, but then they won some games they weren't supposed to. But I agree with you. This stretch coming up is massive because the schedule does get a ton tougher in the back half of the Big Ten. And to get it kind of ahead here, because you already dug yourself into a hole in the Central Michigan game. Well, devastating, and really Michigan's first quad 4 loss since 2010. So it just shows you how rare that is for this program, which has really done a great job avoiding those losses. That was just one of 5 non-conference losses. They dug themselves into a hole already. Don't do that again starting in the Big Ten season. And this is a really nice stretch for them to be able to maybe get ahead of the ball, ahead of the 8 ball here, because it does get tougher. A couple things stand out to me about the last 2 games for Michigan. One is the defense. I mean, just the fact that they are playing with more energy and effort, as you said. And when we were talking to Sadi Washington before the Penn State game, he was saying, well, now we have that on film, and now we got to hold them accountable to that standard. We just created a new standard for ourselves. And as a coach, they're probably excited about that, where it's like, hey, we can show them that if you do X, Y, Z, it leads to a result like this. Now, it's not going to lead to a 35-point win over a Big Ten opponent that was ranked, in the top 35 in KenPom every single night, because that's just crazy. But it will lead to giving yourself a chance every night, probably winning every game. They held Maryland to 0.61 points per possession. That's the lowest Michigan has held a team since Holy Cross in 2018. 18. That's the lowest that Michigan has ever held a Big Ten opponent since KenPom began tracking anything in 2002. So that just shows you, 1, Maryland was cold, and 2, Michigan did a good job. And then I thought the defense again against Penn State was really good. With what I've written about as well, one of the underrated stats of that game is they allowed Penn State, which has assists on 56.4% of its buckets this season, to only have 6 assists on 26 makes against Michigan. One-on-one situations, Anthony, we were joking about it, during the game, at some point with Jalen Pickett just going one-on-one and backing these guys down, 1, he should have got a couple 3-second calls. And 2, maybe Kobe Buffkin pulls the chair out from under him and draws a charge, because, it was just back him down, back him down, back him down. And while he made some of those buckets, Michigan was going to live with that over letting one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country shoot from deep. And they did leave them open on some, but Penn State didn't have the best shooting night, 32% from 3. So I don't know. To me, the defense has stood out, but you also got to mention how much better and how good Kobe Buffkin is now. It kind of came out of nowhere. There was talk for the season. There was concern, certainly not from what I heard inside the program, but there were people around the program and fans saying, Kobe Buffkin, is he going to be good enough for this team? And it seems like he sure is. Doug McDaniel's getting better. You're riding Hunter Dickinson. I thought that was an issue during, some of their struggles where they stopped going to him. And I know he didn't play well against North Carolina, but there's a lot to like about what they've done. The good has been pretty good. The bad has been terrible, and that's why they're in this spot. But I do think there's some light at the end of the tunnel here. We're both going to East Lansing on Saturday. I've only been there once for a Michigan State game last year. I think you've been to a few, right? But what do you expect out of this game? And I know State's getting a little healthier. Malik Hall and Jaden Akins back. I know they've been limited minutes-wise lately, but I think Tom Izzo's always circling that Michigan game where he's like, all right, let's get these guys going 19 minutes, 20 minutes. I think Akins played 13 minutes the other night or something like that. And then here we go. It's full go for Michigan.
It's going to be loud, and it's going to be, it's it's an elite college basketball atmosphere and energy wise, especially when Michigan comes to town there. So for me, I mean, I expect, and let's not forget, Hunter Dickinson is like the villain to Michigan State right now because of things that have been said on his podcast about the fan base, things about Tom. I mean, he respects Tom Izzo, but things his co-host has said about Tom Izzo. We know that the Michigan State fan base, and we won't turn this into a segment about them, but we know it's going to be loud. And every time he touches the ball, that place is going to be booing the crap out of him. And I think that he loves that. And again, I'll stop short of saying it's a legacy game, but Michigan needs to start winning these type of games. And Hunter Dickinson has to help lead them to wins in these type of games. So it's not just a Hunter Dickinson game. It's a Michigan basketball game. The other guys have to step up and make their plays, make their plays in the game too. But this is an environment that this team hasn't played in yet this year. It's going to be nasty. It's going to be venomous in terms of the hatred. And you hope that this team embraces that villain role and it helps kind of build this edge that they've had about them over the last couple of games. But yeah, it's going to be a war. This is a huge game for both of these teams. Michigan State sitting at 10-4 as well. I mean, they've got to win over Kentucky on their resume, but there's nothing super sexy about their schedule or their resume right now either. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, the Michigan State basketball rivalry, to me, football has gotten kind of nasty and venomous for a variety of reasons, but I just like to see good on good, and these two programs consistently have brought it, dating back to when John Beilein was at Michigan. So I'm excited about it. It's a good showcase for basketball in our state, and a good chance for either group to go out there and kind of get maybe not a signature win, but just climb up another rung on the ladder towards getting to where you want to be.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Michigan handles that environment. I think it's just their second true road game of the season, the first one being that Minnesota game. And, of course, Minnesota is not quite the atmosphere they're going to see at the Jack Breslin Student Events Center. And Michigan hasn't won there since January 13th, 2018, that great, fantastic game upset over Michigan State led by, Xavier Simpson, Mo Wagner, those guys, and what was still a sweet win. But, man, you want to get one since then. And so we'll see what happens. But we appreciate everybody watching, listening. If you're watching on YouTube, drop a like, hit the subscribe button. We appreciate you. Keep it locked at thewolverine.com for all of your Michigan coverage going forward here. Sign up and become a premium member today. Just $29.99 until next football season. And we will see everyone next time.